Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar Elm, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to have Andy Laithwaite, the founder of The Actor Inside. This is a company transforming public speaking with acting techniques. From starring in Gangs of London to coaching teams at the NHS and Oxford University, Andy is helping professionals find their voice. Andy, welcome to Founders Future.
Thanks so much, man. That was a very nice intro. I appreciate it.
Of course, I'm excited to dive in. Take us back to what inspired you to start your company, The Actor Inside, and what problems did you find that you were hoping to solve in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's the fundamental question, isn't it? So I don't think it's too broad an assertion to make to say that many of us, if not most of us, hate public speaking. And I don't think that necessarily goes away as a professional issue for a lot of people, right? No matter what your level of seniority, you're always required to put yourself into new situations, new challenging communication scenarios where under pressure, whether it's because of the size of the audience or the novelty of having to like eyeball a camera and loads of people moving around you, or like being on a podcast for the first time, if all your natural skill and communication ability just goes out the window, this thing happens where you end up feeling a bit more like a deer in the headlights. And people like chronically underperform. There's a lot that you can do to help offset that when that happens, to do with how you prepare, to do with also the kinds of awareness and tools that you're leveraging in the moment to not only regain that natural skill that you have when you're more relaxed, but build on it further and amplify your ability to engage audiences effectively, build rapport, build trust, whether that's to a conference audience or whether that's to a client like one-to-one on a kind of Zoom or discovery call. And so it was this fundamental awareness of that combined with my background as a professional actor and having come from a actors get trained in a bunch of different tools to help precisely with this so that they can get up on stage and in spite of their nerves, which are fairly consistent even for a lot of the most experienced people in a business, in spite of them, they can get up and do their best work and engage audiences and storytell effectively through a combination of awareness of their body language, awareness of how they're using their voice, awareness of storytelling. And when you combine all of those tools with a tailored awareness of the specific business challenges and business context that the individual is faced by, then you can create a very special kind of training which emphasizes or is based on learn by doing approach, where you are working with them to practice the scenarios that they're going to be challenged by, whether that's a conference or whether it's a podcast or whatever, and work on that in advance so that they can hit the ground running, turn up feeling like they're not just going to go straight like this, that they're going to stay connected to that skill that they already possess, but that they can, even on top of that, really reach the audience that they're looking to get through to. And that holds true for public speaking as much as for,
Yeah.
as I say, client conversations or indeed difficult like management conversations as well. So
Yeah.
dealing with people for the first time, because so many people who are in managerial roles, they're there because of technical proficiency rather than having any experience of managing people. And they've just got it's like a sink or swim. They've had no training. They're just thrown in the deep end. And we can come in instead and solve that problem of saying, look, let's save you having to make loads of mistakes out in the real world through the learning process. We can create a rehearsal space where we work with you with these relevant techniques so that we save you that
Yeah.
awkwardness. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, that's such an interesting niche that you chose. What one thing I want to touch upon is I remember when I first started like into the realm of personal development and just improving oneself, you hear that fear of public speaking is like the number one fear, and then death is like a close second. It's
Yeah.
like
It's crazy, isn't it?
it's so wild, which makes sense. You know what I mean? A lot of people, that's something they're scared to do. All the way can stem from childhood in front of the class. Why did you choose to carve out the niche of for yourself of working with professionals, with working entrepreneurs, high-level executives? Why that niche? I'm super curious.
Honestly, it came out of necessity from a friend of mine. So he was COO, the rapidly growing startup, and he was looking for precisely this kind of presentation skills training, essentially, for some members of his team. And he had inspected the landscape and generally found that the provision was a little bit, didn't make him that enthusiastic, should we say that? Because so much of how this issue is tackled in the traditional training landscape is you take half a day, you do a workshop, which largely involves death by PowerPoint at its worst. Even if it's really engaging content, it's too cerebral. And
Yeah,
it's if you want to get better at playing football, you've got to play football. You can't just watch football or read books about football. Otherwise, everybody would be Lionel Messi. So you have to do the thing. And ultimately, we came up with the idea that certainly it seemed like there was a very good natural crossover from my world, from my background in professional performance, and leveraging them with the business context to create some targeted practical sessions. And that's what we did. And that was the first thing that we did back in 2018. And it grew from there just because it worked and it seemed to make a real genuine difference. And then once it worked the first time, you're like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Let's see if we can try it out with other companies, other sectors, other individuals, other roles. And to date, it's been very interesting to see how broadly we've been able to serve and provide value, whether that's, as you mentioned, working with aspiring academics at University of Oxford or working with doctors in the NHS, helping them with their kind of bedside manner, or whether it's helping C-suite executives manage their teams more effectively, put themselves out there in thought leadership, or new starters in a sales team do cold calls. It's whether that's in recruitment or finance or anything in between. It's when you're bringing stuff from the performance background and combining it with a highly tailored awareness of what's required by the individual scenario, you can create something that's genuinely quite impactful.
yeah. Communication is universal,
Yeah, of
regardless
course.
where you are, where you're from. Being able to effectively communicate is going to help you in all aspects of life.
100%.
Can you, because from a business perspective, obviously you always hear adages like the riches are in the riches are in the niches. You want to specialize, that kind of stuff.
Yes,
For you, do you guys have a defined ICP or avatar that you love to work with?
that's a really good question. And I think one of the things that makes it a good question, and I can't remember who it was that said this, but when I was beginning to really throw my weight behind building up ActionSide as a business and as a project, I came across the quote idea that often the thing that kills founders isn't not having enough options, it's having too many and drowning in like the sea of potential directions that you can go. And I think that really applies to something like this because, as we say, if it's 70% of people where it's their biggest fear, that's a lot of niches that you could go down into. And so we are continuing to explore all the different avenues that we can go down for that. And that does mean that involves a lot of research and a lot of work. But you also start to identify the areas shared between the different sectors, between the different roles, different companies, which over time becomes much, much easier. And so even though it created, I think like niching down in the first instance can be an incredibly powerful strategy. For us, actually, it was the opposite. It was a bit more like cast the net wide, which
Mm,
involves a huge amount of work and probably didn't make it hugely efficient in the early stages. And then from there, you can at least begin to hone down on a select few sectors, roles, individuals who benefit the most from what you do. And I'm
yeah,
sure that it's quite possible that we'll continue along that road and along that process. And who knows, maybe if we speak in another 3 years, we'll only be helping one specific avatar and one specific niche, and it will be highly specialized.
yeah,
But who knows? We'll just have to see what happens as we continue this iteration process.
yeah, for sure. Have you iterated to the point where you maybe have a handful of people right now that you focus on?
Yeah,
Or
so in terms of sectors, I would say obviously entrepreneurs found that's not a sector, but in terms of a profile, you've got entrepreneurs, founders,
yeah,
and anybody who is looking to pitch their business idea. And that's sector agnostic to an extent, like the way that we can help them, like listeners of this podcast, for instance. But then within more fully fledged businesses, we're definitely getting a clearer sense of the sectors that we are gaining a lot of experience with and gaining a lot of traction with and delivering a lot of value for.
Yeah.
And they are very broadly speaking divided into three buckets. There's kind of finance and finance adjacent, so investment management, banking, financial services, insurance. And often with these companies, they're on quite tend to be larger and tend to have the difficulty of conveying quite technical and at times dry information in a more engaging and human way, which is obviously something that we can help with. Then related to that, you have the kind of tech sector. I know that's incredibly broad, but it's still a helpful broad bucket. And with those people, again, there's a sense of being able to translate technical knowledge and technical language into something which is more palatable, not just for external consumers and gets them excited and gets them to take action and gets them to recognize the value of your product more effectively, but also internally, right? So being able for product managers to relate to the rest of their tech team and provide the kind of human direction necessary
Yeah.
is, and being able to see the big picture and sell the vision rather than get stuck in the weeds of nitty-gritty problem solving. That's a big thing as well that we help with. And then the final bucket is marketing, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you can understand a very natural synergy there where so much of what marketing agencies and market research agencies are looking to do is to help companies cut through the noise and stand out and be a little bit different and do that in a way which is emotionally authentic and engaging even. And the crossover there with performance art and acting is potentially the most clear out of them all. It's something that we can really help just enable people to lean into their personality and stand out and differentiate themselves a little bit more in what is ultimately a very overcrowded and sometimes a bit sterile marketplace.
Yeah. I think this is actually very niche down. Like you made me feel like you were going to be extremely broad, but I feel like this is actually pretty solid in terms of who you can help and who you can help the most in terms of, okay, you come in, you make a tweak, it has a huge leverage over the industry, or sorry, over the business and the organization that you're implementing this in. Marketing space, I completely see, and anybody that does any sort of online content, I can see how this is hugely beneficial for, because in the world of video sales letters and content,
Yes.
YouTube, all these different things.
And Loom, ever since Loom came onto the scene too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you can connect with somebody, it's especially via video, if you're just recording it and they can feel that off you, drastically increases conversions, drastically.
Hugely. Yeah.
Help us understand, let's shift quickly to from the business aspect of it. How do you generate your leads for these entrepreneurs, founders, business owners?
Yeah. That was a big challenge for us. And it's one of the biggest challenge for any business is like, how do you get the word out there?
Yeah.
But it wasn't always a challenge, right? Because it only really started to become a challenge when I started to become a bit more ambitious about what I wanted it to be. Because in the initial stages, it was just referrals. And I think that was testament to the fact that the training worked and people got a good deal out of it and found it genuinely valuable and genuinely novel and fun and engaging and all the rest of it. And it made a difference, crucially. So we got a really good slew of referrals, and pretty much that's how the business ran for, I would say, the first 75%, 80% of the time since 2018. And it's only really been within the last 18 months where I had decided, actually, let's take this to the next level, because I think that there is genuine value that we can provide people here, and a lot more people than that we're providing for at the moment. So let's put the word out there. And I looked into a bunch of different stuff. In the end, decided to go down the cold email route as the first
Okay.
optimal, the first port of call, should we say? And it's funny because it was a big, there's so much dross in the cold email market, right? You get some really dreadful reach outs, and a lot of stuff is completely irrelevant and can make you a bit mad that
Yeah.
your inbox is getting cluttered with it in the first place. But I ended up partnering with some fantastic people, a fantastic agency who helped me craft email campaigns that are much more tailored, much more personal, and
Mm,
ultimately target more effectively, I think, the prospects who I think will genuinely have the biggest chance of finding the most value out of what I offer. And then even if you do turn up in their inbox and they don't want to hear from you, they'll just ignore you or delete the email. And
Yeah.
I excuse that for my part by saying it's enabling me to reach a good number of people who I end up helping quite tangibly,
Yeah.
and therefore it's worth it. And we've had some very good return on that. It's probably our primary lead gen system at the
Okay.
moment. And it's provided a really fantastic foundation on which to continue to leverage all the referral stuff that we already had, right? But
Yeah.
it's made things a lot more systematic, and it's enabling us to begin to expand the scale in a way that wasn't the case for the first couple of years of the business, at least.
100%. Because if you can send a couple hundred or a couple thousand of emails a day, it drastically increases the amount of calls that you can have. I'm curious, what does that sales process look like from somebody?
Yeah, so often, obviously, we have occasional inbound stuff as well, but from the outbound side of things, from the cold email, we normally will set up a call, and it's just as you might expect from a kind of tailored discovery process. We will have the initial call to figure out what it was that piqued their interest out of the message that we originally sent, and then ask them a bunch of questions about their business, about their team, about they themselves, their own personal needs, if they're just looking to train for that. Like, what are really, why are you talking to us? Like, clearly there must be something that interested you about this offer. And then from there, we'll be able to hop on another call and start to flesh out a suggestion for what, if anything, we can do to help them. And that might be one-to-one coaching if they're looking for just themselves, or it might be one of the more broader team training solutions, or group workshops, or the whole company lunch and learns and things like that. It
Yeah.
just depends on their budget, the level of depth that they want to go into, and
Yeah.
also the intensity of their need as well. If they're just looking to work on one event and they're otherwise really confident, we won't suggest the same pattern of training that we will if they stutter and mumble and struggle to get any words out every time they go up to do public speaking. So it's highly tailored, it's highly involved. And what's been amazing from that as well is that it, in the broader business sense, has provided us with so much amazing detail and information about what people really care about when it comes to this kind of training. And then you can factor that back into the messaging and also the offering to make sure that the offering is providing the most value to the people that you're looking to help.
That's such a great lesson. It's one of the best ways to iterate and to optimize what you're doing is just by listening to the feedback of the people that
Mm.
you're reaching out to. What do
Mm.
they need? What do they want? How can I tailor my messaging in a way to speak to them earlier about that?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that. Where do you want to take this? What's the vision for the company?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I'm very excited by the prospect of what it could become, what it might become, and what I'd like it to become with a bit more work and a bit more time. There's so many routes that I think that we can still go with it. Obviously, we can continue down the route that is already working for us, which is doing this blend of independent training and team training. And a lot of the partners that we end up forming a relationship with, a training relationship, we end up working with them long term. You know what I mean? It's you do the one session, it works, makes a difference. So they bring you on to help with a different need somewhere else in the company or different people. And so that creates a lot of repeat business and deepens those relationships and deepens that trust and really helps you to help them more and tailor that training provision for them even more effectively. So this model works. But in terms of where we might branch out to next, I'd love to start making more the group sessions, for instance, available to independent trainees as well. For instance, running group classes and even video courses as a first port of call so
Yeah,
that people who don't have the time or the budget to do the individual training,
yeah,
one-to-one coaching, can still have a good entry point into this, because I know obviously particularly for a lot of founders and entrepreneurs in the early stages, you're really strapped for cash and you're really trying to deploy what you do have in an effective way. So if we can provide solutions to that audience and other audiences like it, where the it's more accessible, then I think that would be fantastic, and that would really chime in with my mission of trying to help as many people as possible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Expanding more offerings, more solutions for a wider net of people.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, you can really help basically anyone in their life with these kind of strategies. What do you feel like, as the founder yourself, what do you feel like are the biggest challenges that you're facing, that you're currently working through?
Oh yeah. There's plenty. I would say the biggest one is time in the day, right? It's just how do you optimize your process and outsource what can be outsourced?
Hmm.
And whether that's to other members of your team or getting other companies or third parties involved, and truly identifying where your time is most effectively spent. Now, if we're to take an example from where we're at the moment, I still take a very large role, the main role in that relationship building process with new clients. And that's really helpful. It continues to be, obviously, it takes up a lot of time, a lot of my time, but it's so valuable for getting to know the audience better and better. And I think that still isn't quite something that I want to fully outsource to somebody else within the team. But then I could think of 101 other little, just like basic, silly little admin tasks that I'm still finding myself doing. I'm like, yes, you know what? I don't need to do this. I really do not need to be the one who is sending out this paperwork or whatever. So it's an interesting phase. The biggest problem, in answer to your question, it's time. And then from there, running that analysis of, okay, so if I want to gain more time, what do I begin to outsource? What are the key tasks that won't hugely depreciate in quality in a way
Yeah,
that matters to our clients if I get somebody else to do them?
I love that. I love that. Because once you have that in place, you can scale much further.
Yes,
Especially-
100%.
That's what we found because we work with coaches, consultants, and agencies all the time, and figuring out a way to create their offering in a way that's almost productized, where it doesn't necessarily need to take up their time unless they want it to, allows
Mhm.
for the most scale in terms of helping the most amount of people and bring them in because you have a system that you can handle
Yes,
capacity, right?
yes,
That's
yes.
what a lot of founders run into is just capacity issues. I can only serve so many people at a time.
Yeah. And I think the productization point is a really important one, right? Particularly for an area like ours where a lot of the impact does come from the way in which we tailor the training. Nonetheless, the more time that we're in the space, the more we get to identify truly what are the common threads that hold true across all sectors so that we can even now, like compared to where we were when we first started. When we first started, it really was just like almost fully bespoke. But now at least we can turn up and say, look, we have a bunch of off-the-shelf courses, which will still adapt to your specific scenario or your specific team or your specific problem. And we can go like fully bespoke if you want to as well, if you have something that's truly unique. But that in itself, it finds a nice middle ground, doesn't it, between having to come up with it, reinventing the wheel every single time
Yeah.
versus saving you a lot of homework, a lot of admin, and ultimately still delivering that bang for the buck that the client is after because you're not just trotting it out exactly as it is, but you're using that as the framework to then build a tailored solution.
Yes. Yes. I love that. What's the best place for people to reach you?
It would be through contacting hello@actorinside.com or by dropping us a line on the website at actorinside.com. You can even book a call with me directly through there. So if this sounds like anything that people listening would be interested in chatting about, then by all means, reach out. It'd be lovely to chat.
Awesome. I really appreciate your time, Andy.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, mate. Nice to chat.
You too. So this wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. Again, I want to thank you, Andy, for sharing your incredible journey and your insights with us today. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their sales and marketing efforts through world-class systems and playbooks. Until then, keep on climbing.